The new issue of Organiser arrives with a sharp and urgent question from West Bengal. Is Bengal still functioning in the spirit of democracy, or is it slipping into what this week's cover calls Mamata'cracy? This is the central theme of this edition of Organiser. Namaste and welcome to Organiser this week. I am today taking you through all the major stories, all the key arguments and all the writers featured in this issue. So, let us begin with the editorial titled Beyond Elections, Saving the True Spirit of Bengal, written by Shri Prafulla Ketkar. The editorial sets the ideological tone for the entire issue. It says that the coming election in West Bengal is not merely about seats, parties or even the technicalities of the electoral roll revision. It says that the real battle is over the preservation of Bengal's civilizational and nationalist spirit. The editorial recalls Bengal's historical role in the freedom movement, invokes the cultural force of the Renaissance and then contrasts that legacy with what it describes as a long descent into intimidation, appeasement, street violence, infiltration politics and mob pressure on the constitutional processes. It also points to a culture of political violence in the state, referencing long historical patterns and warnings that democracy loses meaning when constitutional mechanisms are replaced by fear and organized coercion. This particular editorial is not presented as a routine election comment. It is framed as a call to rescue Bengal's moral core. After this comes the cover story, Democracy or Mamata'cracy by Subrata Bhaumik. In his write-up, Bhaumik argues that the Trinamool Congress is trying to redefine Bengali private narrow paracoil terms and is using that redefinition for vote bank consolidation. The article says that Bengal's cultural identity has historically never been isolationist. Instead, it has always connected with the larger civilizational idea of Bharat. To make that point, the piece invokes Bankim Chandra, Rabindranath Tagore, Vivekananda and Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. It argues that the real Bengali tradition is expansive and not exclusionary. The essay also claims that the current politics of the state has fused even the leftist regional framing with Muslim appeasement, turning identity into a political weapon in the entire West Bengal. One of the strongest parts of the article is where it links this politics to demographic anxieties, historical episodes of violence and the resistance to processes like electoral revision. In short, this piece says that what is being sold as Bengali Asmita is actually a distortion of Bengal's deeper heritage. The next major article in the cover package is SIR Discourse, Selective Perception or Constitutional Wisdom by Advocate Karan Thakur. This piece shifts the discussion from street politics to the language of institutions. It argues that a certain ecosystem of commentary is trying to weaken public trust in constitutional offices by replacing facts with sweeping ideological suspicion. The specific discussion centers on the Election Commission and the broader constitutional framework. The article says that criticism is legitimate, but cynicism without evidence is dangerous. It invokes constitutional reasoning and judicial thinking to argue that democratic institutions must not be casually delegitimized simply because they do not satisfy one ideological constituency. Within the larger Bengal theme of this issue, the article serves a very clear role. It says that if institutions are attacked in the name of politics, democracy itself gets hollowed out. Then comes Craving for Correction by Dr. Ravi Kumar Mishra. This article is politically sharper and electorally more direct. It says that West Bengal's voters are increasingly looking for a credible alternative rooted in cultural confidence, development as much as security. The article speaks of public frustration with corruption, Hindu alienation and the sense that the present ruling dispensation no longer represents the anguish of ordinary citizens. It also touches on the emotional and political fallout of incidents like the Arjikar case and links them to a larger crisis of accountability. The thrust of the article is that Bengal is not merely looking for another election cycle, it is actually looking for a correction for a course change. The writer suggests that this craving is visibly beneath the political surface and may shape the next electoral verdict, which is going to come out on the 4th of May. The fourth major piece in the Bengal cluster is Collective Aspiration for Good Governance by Manas Dev. This article zooms in especially on North Bengal and presents the region as a zone of neglected potential. It says that North Bengal has resources, strategic importance and aspiration, but it has not been received good governance proportionate to its needs. The piece frames the 2026 election as a democratic movement in which the demand for transparent electoral processes and accountable administration has become central. The article also argues that for many voters, this election is no longer just about slogans or welfare. It is actually about administrative credibility and whether the state can finally move towards good governance. This article broadens the issue beyond identity politics and asks what kind of government Bengal actually needs today. Then comes one of the most strongest and cultural political article in the issue, The Inhuman Undermining of Shakti by Dr. Amrita Banerjee. This article focuses on women's dignity and the condition of women in Bengal. It begins from a civilizational premise. In the Bharatiya worldview, woman is Shakti and not merely a category of victimhood or a political constituency. From there, it asks how Bengal, with its reformist and spiritual legacy, has reached to a point where violence, vulnerability and insecurity have become recurring themes in public life. The article also says that the erosion here is deeper than the bad governance. It is a moral and cultural regression. It says that if Bengal drifts away from its own civilizational conscience, then the issue is not only law and order. The issue is whether society still retains its moral instinct to protect women's dignity or not. After that, the issue carries from Macaulay to Mamata via Marxist by Dr. Suparna Moitra. This article takes a longer historical view. It argues that Bengal's contemporary stagnation is not the product of one government alone. Instead, it is a cumulative result of the colonial educational frameworks, left ideological dominance and the governance choices of the present regime. The article looks at Bengal's decline from being an intellectual and commercial powerhouse to a state struggling with stagnation, unemployment, capital fight and institutional decay. Its argument is that Bengal's problems are layered across 2 centuries of educational design, cultural psychology and political misdirection. So, while the article is located within the electoral movement, it tries to explain why Bengal's crisis is civilizational, intellectual and structural and not just electoral. The last major Bengal piece in the sequence is Bury the Babar's Ghost by Kamleshwar Nath, a former judge of the Allahabad High Court. This article shifts from Bengal's electoral present to a deeper civilizational and religious argument. It discusses objections to invoking Babar in contemporary mosque politics and says that the symbolic afterlife of such invader-centric naming has no place in national life. The piece links this to debates emerging from Murshidabad and attempts to revive the Babri frame in contemporary discourse. Whether one agrees or disagrees, the article is clearly placed here to make a larger ideological point that political memory in Bharat cannot be held hostage to the glorification of invaders like Babar. In the architecture of this issue, this piece functions as a civilizational climax of the Bengal package. After the Bengal cover package, the issue moves to an important exclusive interview in the Sabarimala case. The state should stay away from religious matters. This conversation is with Jainacharya Yugbhushan Suriji. The context is the review petition in the Sabarimala matter and the wider constitutional questions raised around Article 25 and 26. The interview's central concern is not only entry into the temple, it is about whether religions that originated in Bharat are being understood within a civilizational appropriate legal framework. The discussion raises questions about the legal personality of religions, the rights of the religious communities and the proper limits of state intervention in the matters when it comes to faith. This is one of the issue's most conceptually rich sections because it moves from a current court case to a larger questions of jurisprudence, dharma and constitutional interpretation. The report section of this week features harmonizing education based on the Vidya Bharati AGM 2026. The article says that the purpose of education goes beyond knowledge transfer and into nation building, values and holistic development. It reports on discussions around Indian knowledge systems, value-based education, school expansion, women's skill development, de-addiction, digital initiatives and long-term organizational resolutions. What makes this report significant is that it captures a particular education philosophy, one that sees education not as a neutral credential making, but as a cultivation of national commitment and character. Then comes another report, Personal Life Becomes Comfortable Only When the Nation is Secure. This piece covers Dr. Mohan Bhagwat's remarks during the Bala Gokulam Golden Jubilee event in Kerala. The message here is clear. Private virtue is not enough unless it is connected to the national duty. The article says that individual and family life can be stable and comfortable only when the nation itself is secure. It links personal character, civilizational values and public responsibility. In many ways, this report extends the same philosophical thread running through the issue, that the idea that society, dharma, culture and nations are inseparable. The issue also includes the RSS News Roundup, which gathers updates from across the country. Among the highlighted reports is Arun Kumar Ji's address in Shimla, where he says that the Sangh is shaping individuals imbued with patriotism and social responsibility, and notes that over 1 lakh service projects are being carried out nationwide. Another highlighted item is J. Nandakumar Ji's lecture in Bhopal, where he argues that manifestation is a more meaningful term than creation in understanding scientific knowledge from a Bharatiya perspective. These reports collectively show that the Sangh, not only as an organization force but also as an ideological and civilizational network working across education, science, values and of course social work. So with this edition, Organiser is asking one simple question: whether Bengal, by extension of Bharat, will be shaped by civilizational confidence and constitutional order, or by appeasement, intimidation, cultural distortion and institutional erosion. This is all in this week's Organiser issue. Thank you for watching.